Welcome to the Doug and Mike Show. I'm Doug.
Hey, and I am Mike.
And we have real conversations with real people. Mike, who's our guest today?
We've got a great guest today. We are going to talk a little bit about money, something that you and I have tons of. We don't like to talk about that all the time, but it's everywhere. I think there's some stapled on the ceiling here above me. But no, we do. We have a great guest today, and Ed Korsinsky. Am I saying that right?
Absolutely, Mike.
I pulled it off. So
I think it's Irish. I'm pretty sure it's Irish, isn't it? Is it the Irish spelling?
It just in time for St. Patty's Day, right? So gonna learn a lot today about what goes on in the pension world in terms of protection and looking out for those retirement plans that not only you and I, our firefighters, enjoy, but people in all sectors and all walks of life enjoy. Kind of an important.
Mike, we're gonna take a time out. Okay.
Okay.
Because that's in the future. Okay. We want to do a little rewind. Okay.
Okay.
That guy Ed, I don't know Ed. I want to know Ed. But I want to know Ed like young Ed. Like we see what he's on the screen right now, but we need to bring Ed in and let's get a little background of young Ed and how he passed through the couple decades, because he's a pretty young guy too.
I guess
Ed, we're hitting it over the net to you right now. Whoop.
Oh no, I guess if you want to just introduce me, I guess you can say, look, Ed is a securities lawyer that works with a lot of pension funds and so on and so forth. You don't have to get sort of.
Oh, okay, all right.
And you can just
Hey Ed, yeah. It's our podcast.
Oh,
our podcast. Okay. This when we rewind, that was the question. We can ask the questions. Now you got to answer.
Oh my gosh, that's tough. I don't know about
this.
It's like a deposition. Okay, I like that. Okay, just the other way around.
Hey,
all right, what's the question?
Take us back. So listen,
listen.
The question is to take us back to your beginnings. Take us back to what got you interested in law. What got you interested in heading off to college. Tell us a little bit about what those what that transition in your life was, taking that big leap.
Okay. So thanks for having me on, and talking about that. It's not often that I get to talk about the younger Ed or looking back. And
I want before college. I want to hear a little bit before college.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I may not want to hear it.
Well, you've obviously done well, so it all worked out.
So it all started with I guess my parents. My parents were immigrants. They had. You were almost right about the origins of my name. It's not Irish. It comes from a country that's probably a neighbor of Ireland, which is Ukraine.
Right on the other side of the pond.
And I guess what they have in common, the Ukrainians and the Irish, is they love probably both love Irish whiskey and vodka. So I don't know what happens when you mix the two, but I'm sure I tried it when I was young, and maybe that's part.
Somebody's tried it, I guarantee it.
Absolutely, and perhaps we should try it one day on this podcast and see what happens. We can live.
There we go. This is what we're gonna do.
Yeah. So
I'm gonna head to the liquor cabinet real quick.
Oh boy.
He is joking. No, keep going, Ed.
What time is that?
So your parents are immigrants.
So my parents are immigrants. They've always encouraged us to go out there and do something with your lives, because we're sure as heck not going to give you anything because we don't have anything to give you. But they were really supportive, and they were very educated, but back in Russia, and they were just trying to Russia, Ukraine. And when they came to the U.S., just like any immigrant, it's hard to sort of get back to where you were. You have a language barrier, a cultural barrier, and so on. So my parents, I guess, just my brother and I, they live through us vicariously. And so fast forward to actually high school and college, I had a computer sort of techie thing about me. I loved writing programs and actually had a little bit of business going on the side. And so I graduated with an accounting degree because I was writing accounting programs for some companies during college as a part-time gig, and got me interested in accounting. And my professors told me, you're doing well in accounting, but I don't think your heart is it. It's just not exciting enough for you. You're just so creative, and you're talking about all these different things, and accountants who are creative find themselves in jail. So
sure.
That is a great quote. I love that. Now we're getting to the meat.
So I really enjoyed the creativity of programming and accounting and creating things. I guess I owe that to my dad, who brought the first IBM computer into the house when very few people in the 80s had them. He was actually an inventor and invented some interesting things, which I don't know what the rating is of this podcast, so we won't really go there. Some of them are quite racy, but in any event, he invented technology and was given what then was a really expensive piece of technology. IBM PC, if I recall correctly, he told me it was about $5,000. So $5,000 in the 80s was a lot of money.
Oh yeah, sure.
And so we had that, and I was able to play with that. So just got that techie background and all that. So to me, that just was just an outlet for creativity. And then my father got me. I got into real big trouble, and I think I stopped working on computers for a while because I took apart his IBM PC and couldn't put it back together.
Oh no.
That was
snap.
Yeah. Shouldn't have done that. But I learned a lot about components and how things work. And I used to buy and sell these little components. And believe it or not, I once got Michael Dell on the phone when he used to sell parts when he was not Michael Dell. So that was pretty cool. In any event, I don't know what happened, but at some point. My parents tell me, you're just going to waste your time with all this computer shit. Oh, sorry. The computer nonsense. It's just a dead end. It's just for people who kind of like to play. You got to actually do something that
you got to become something.
You got to become something,
Because the internet's a fad.
The whole thing was a fad. Exactly. I remember Netscape. That was a fad. That's just going to come and go. It's just games. Right. People who like to, those were the days of the hackers, 2600s, Atari. I don't know if I remember any event. So they just considered that. And I considered that as at that point, I was impressionable, I was young, and considered that that's just not going to be something that's going to stick. But you know what's going to stick? Lawyering is going to stick. There's always a need for a lawyer. Because that's guaranteed. People are going to get into trouble. People are going to need lawyers. Computers, you know what? Maybe not. Maybe yes, maybe not. Now, kind of.
So are you the first lawyer in your family?
I am. Although, actually, the first lawyer with a license. I have many family members who like to argue and think.
Yes, we have what they call we have what they call firehouse lawyers. We have my department has 282 of them.
Yeah, and day traders.
And yeah, that's right. And day traders, yeah. And they know everything about it. Just ask them; they'll tell you.
Right. Yeah. So
who mentored you to make you choose law, or did you have anybody special and that mentored you for law?
It was really my dad. My dad and I were very close until lately. He has dementia now and doesn't really know who I am. But we used to do everything together. Very, very intelligent guy. I looked up to my dad. I still do. I mean, I hope he's still there. And so we just talked a lot about different things. And used to take him best, at some point when you talk about my travels and hearings and all that. We used to go to court hearings all the time. He used to very much enjoy, like I said, he lived vicariously through his children. He also lived somewhat professionally through his children. He wanted to, he'd show up to the court hearings and to my presentations. So he was an early mentor and really a big supporter of our careers. And I probably wouldn't be here without him. So he's certainly an important part of my life. Went to law school.
All right, I got to stop you again,
yeah.
Mike. I think it's time for the radio question for him in high school. I think that's a fair question. Now, do you think?
Oh, Ed, yeah, this is a good one that it's kind of like we're not psychologists, but somewhere along the way we picked up a couple little tricks that reveal some very deep background and emotional things that help us understand who Ed is. So Ed, take us back. You're cruising to school. Let's take it back to high school, because he tried to get into college there and leave that behind, but we're going to go back and grab it. But you're cruising to school. What are you driving? What's that vehicle you're in? Is it, tell us the year, make, and model, color, and Ed, most importantly, what is on the radio? What are you listening to?
Oh my God. I don't think
we're rattling his cage, man. This is fantastic.
Doug and Mike, I don't think that you realize what type of sore point you have just touched.
Oh, maybe there we go.
Maybe you have, because this has happened here before. Okay, you asked for it, so you're going to get it. So let's answer your first question. What was I driving? An Olds Delta 88. I don't remember what year it was.
Oldsmobile.
But it was relatively new, 1 or 2 or 3 years old, something like that. And I was driving it the very first day I got my license. Not the first day, but the first couple of days or weeks. And it was my purchase. So I had purchased it then. I remember the number, $400. Now, how do I get a relatively new car for $400?
Well played.
So, well, there's a second part to that story. You may not think so in terms of a financial investment. So my parents never got their license, and that was a sore point for my brother and I growing up. We never went anywhere. At least anywhere that you couldn't get to by bus or walking. So we lived in an urban area, so it was okay. But still, no car was certainly a liability. And I wanted one right away. So as soon as I got my license, of course, was looking for one. My teacher tells me, this is my math teacher who I was close to, says, I think I have a car that you'd be interested in, and it's reasonably priced. I'm trying to get rid of it. Turns out the car was in an accident. It was hit. This is the front of the car, if you can see it. It was kind of hit on the side like that. So the headlights were like probably 1 or 2 feet. The front of the car was 1 or 2 feet shifted right. So when you're driving it, you're kind of like you're shifting. You kind of know where this is going. Anyway,
you're fantastic at right turns, though. Nobody beat you at right turns.
So everything you see, I mean, you're kind of driving, but the front of the car is like 1 or 2 feet shifted to the right.
Is this a good time to talk about your drifting right eye right now? No.
Yeah. And so I went to his house. It's a beautiful car, except for that relatively minor problem. I said, it's yours for $400. And I said, fine, it's pretty much all I can afford. It's what I have, and I can insurance and all that. And I took it home, And everybody who sees that, we didn't have a garage, as I said, it's an urban, you park it on the street, everybody sees it. And it was like, everybody's like laughing at me, snickering, laughing. This is, you're driving. I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like whenever I go in, it's like the most beautiful car I have, and I'm great.
Totally.
So I don't really care. You all laugh. And I can't tell you how many times you went to school with it and they would just, laugh, snicker. And I'm like, I don't care. I got
You had wheels, man.
I'm happy. I got wheels. I can afford it. I can, and there was one time in particular that's really ingrained in my mind. I was with my mom. I was driving her someplace, and we're at a red light, and it was pouring. It was like just pouring, and we're comfortably ensconced in my, relatively new Delta 88, and these people are crossing with their umbrellas, going with the wind and everything. And with all of that, they look like they're, just like, in a thunderstorm. And it was a hard wish. They look at my car and they're like starting to laugh. And I'm like,
man, this is a good therapy session.
You know what's classic, Mike? We just asked the guy what was on the radio.
Yeah. I'm looking at pictures of this car too, man. This thing had a trunk. I mean, you could you could bring home the cabinet television in the trunk of this thing.
I love that car. They just don't make cars like that anymore. And
they don't.
Car since then has been a letdown for me. I had by the way, I think I drove that car for 2.5 years or 3, where it got so embarrassing that even, my parents told me, please, I just can't handle it. Get a new car. I'm like, listen, dude, okay, I'm the guy now who has to drive you all around. So it's not like you can, make plans on what kind of car, I'm going to get. So
we're laughing with empathy. That's what we're doing. I mean, you're talking to a couple of guys who had they had pretty they had cars that made people point and laugh at us as well.
Yeah. I had a '64 Falcon with one door didn't even work. It was a 4-door, and it was blotchy white with giant gray primer spots around it, like a white silver Dalmatian. So I will take my '64 Falcon against your cross-eyed or Delta 88 and cockeyed any day. What was on the radio? Answer the question.
Oh my gosh, what was on the radio? I don't know. I was too busy trying to.
Rock? Was it disco?
It was probably Queen. It was.
All right.
Oh, nice.
It was.
Good answer.
I have a very eclectic music. I can go from Queen to rap to classical.
Rap.
I can go all. I mean, my wife. I was just on a Peloton, and I discovered Megan the Stallion on the Peloton. And my wife was like, "You're listening to this?" I'm like, "It's not even music." You're right, but it sounds good on the Peloton. You're killing yourself.
I like that he said rap, Mike. And how interesting is that?
Oh yeah, we that's a topic for another show, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we at least got us back into college with that nice little digression. I enjoyed that. See how much we learn about each other when we do that. It's amazing. And we got some therapy.
Some of that. We may have to censor some of this because not many people know about that car. By the time, but it was a good financial decision actually. Now that I recall, after about 2.5 years, or maybe longer of driving this, it's about 2 years, I guess, through college. The front started falling off as you're driving it, so I had to put in. First, it was like string or yarn, to keep the lights up.
Oh my goodness!
And then it was like chains with locks and everything. And at some point, you had to sell it. But I think I sold it for either $400 or $450 2.5 years later to some other guy.
Well played.
There you have it.
It was a good financial investment, which is very important.
And so take us back
to the last PTSD part about a car, okay? Because it was definitely a touchdown, which I appreciate. Is you had wheels, my friend, and guess what? As much as they laughed, they got in the car, didn't they?
You darn right they did.
Absolutely, man.
So,
Yep. All right. So then we're moving into your college years. Where are you in college? What are you studying and why?
So, as I said, I had this sort of computer bug back in high school still, and I had some clients in high school. Now that I recall, I was wearing a beeper. I'm really going back deep here. I had a beeper and had some interesting clients. Word got out that I was a good computer guy. There's a story to that also. I don't know if you want to hear it because it kind of goes back to high school a little bit. But it's, you know, I got my first client on a street corner, and everything went from there. There's a story to that. But
okay, so let's recap. You're a drug dealer with a Delta 88 that can transport bodies from Goodfellas. Okay, continue.
And you drink vodka and Irish whiskey at the same time. Man, you're going to relate to a lot of our listeners. I can tell you that.
You got to go back to my immigrant roots. I got to do what I got to do. Make ends meet. That was a crap. I used to sell watches when I was 9 years old on around the corner, you know, just to make some money. You know, not hot ones. They were
this is classic, man.
We'll put that disclaimer at the bottom. We'll put that right down here.
Yeah, not the hot ones. I don't want to get disbarred, man.
Full disclaimer, he was not a drug dealer. Okay.
Right.
I think.
Maybe. I guess. I hope. Well, you know, these days it's not so bad. I mean, it depends how you define drugs. Right?
Oh, that's right. Pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals, a little smoking here and there. I mean,
yeah, probably some of your clients now in your world, right?
Now thinking about it, there was one client when I was probably in high school or college, probably high school. He ended up being one of the, I lost touch with him, obviously, it's many years ago. He ended up becoming one of the big drug dealers, actually, the weed drug dealers, because I read a story about him, and then he somehow got out of it, and, you know, now he's all legal about it. Very, very smart guy. At that time, he was selling nuts, and he needed a computer program for keeping track of his nuts.
Reasonable, you know.
I guess, you know, when you're a high school kid, it sounds reasonable. I don't know.
You know, the computer background is fascinating because I would have had no clue with the legal aspect. So that it really it's really an enlightenment. So,
my partner Joe Levy and I, it's Levy and Korsinsky, my firm. We first came across each other when I was selling him HP printers. He used to have a computer company too. He claims they were hot because I was selling them $50 below wholesale. I was just a very good buyer. So that's how we knew each other. And then we ended up just separately years later bumping into each other in law school, and then years later bumping into each other when I was out of work. And then we became partners. So three times a charm.
So when you started studying law, did you know that you were going to end up doing the financial and the investment forensics and those types of things? Was that something you knew right away, or did you find that in the journey?
I think I knew that not when I started, but towards the end. I was very interested in investing. I had written a program, at that time was a very primitive algorithmic trading program for one of my clients. One of my clients was a very interesting guy who taught me a lot about trading just by being there in the office. He was the largest retail gold dealer, or one of the largest retail gold dealers in New York. And he needed some programming for his accounting and all that. But what happened? What was interesting about him was he was trading gold futures against the gold that he actually sold to jewelers. I didn't know this, but you know, jewelers who actually, you know, sell you jewelry or make the jewelry have to get the gold someplace. And there's actually a retail window where you go and you say, I need like whatever it is, an ounce of gold, a kilo of gold for my day today to work on it. So it's quite interesting. This is the guy who, got these big shipments of gold and would sell it to small retail jewelers to make jewelry out of, which you'd find eventually in your store. So he needed to just hedge it. Did we miss Mike or we're just
no?
Yeah. So he needed he was doing some trading and he was experimenting with writing some programs, and we worked on a program together. And that's how I got interested in sort of the markets and trading. And so that was a rudimentary algorithmic sort of analysis trading on gold futures. And so that was like probably my last year of law school that I was working on that. That got me really intrigued about the markets.
So you were doing coding before coding was cool.
Yeah, well, but yeah, I guess I just maybe my wife says, you could have stuck at that and we wouldn't be, here, and we'd be, you'd probably be making real money.
Partner at a firm.
Yeah, you'd be making real money. You wouldn't have to work. You'd be able to wear, now I'm wearing I got hoodies in every color now because I'm at home and I can't wear that to the office, otherwise they think I'm a drug dealer. So, but
coming back to that,
I know. It's just, drugs or coding. I don't know which is more lucrative.
Yeah. When you say beeper, man, all I can think of is codes. Like,
no, that's right.
The shortcuts,
Right. Because
we're digressing here, Mike. This is good stuff.
Ed, what was your first job? What was your first real job out of college when you got out there and got spit out into the real world?
Well, as I said, I went from college to law school, and I had all these gigs on the side, sort of like clients and
gigs.
Like gigabytes?
Gigabytes.
Or what? Okay, yeah, gigabytes. Okay, I follow.
Yeah, well played.
So.
Yes, I mean, you've been having gigs for a long time, but I'm talking about coming out, professionally trained as a lawyer. What's Ed's first client gig job?
You mean like a real job? You mean like a real job? So that's another sore point because I wasn't very good at keeping a job.
If you still have that old Delta 88 right now, you wouldn't even have to work anymore.
Oh yeah, you get $400. I'm sure somebody today is still driving that.
Oh yeah,
that is just. And that guy that I sold it to, I think, drove it for years because I went back to the neighborhood after I left and I saw it in his garage and he wouldn't let it go. You just fall in love with something like that. You just don't want to let it go.
I'm going to make it a screensaver for a week just in tribute to Delta 88.
I got to call that guy. You just remind me. I'm going to call this guy and find out what he did with that, and still has it. So my real job. So fast forward, right? So I graduate college. I pretty much go right into law school with all sorts of interesting things doing on the side. And then my last year of law school, this relates to my job. My last year of law school, I had worked on as a document reviewer for a law firm. His friend, I had a friend of mine whose father had a law firm that does this type of work that I do now. He was one of the original sort of, lawyers that did investor protection, institutional investment protection cases, securities cases, and all that. And so the last year of law school, I was working on a case that he was working on. It was a really interesting, very big case. I remember the name, called Geodyne, where thousands of investors were lost money in some sort of weird, wacko, limited partnership type investment that nobody probably understood in oil and gas. And so one of the reasons I did it, it was very appealing to me, was the case was in Delaware. So I get to travel in Delaware, and I took the train and stayed in really nice hotels while we were just looking at documents and so on. So it was a $10 an hour job, but it was really interesting to just get me acquainted with the law and this and that, and this part of the law. So I graduated, and before I graduated, I was kind of working in this case, and it got me really interested. I said, wow, this is amazing. You can file this case and get money back for investors. I've been investing in the markets, and I thought, you'd lose money and that's it. I didn't really realize that there was this whole sort of world where, some company does something, says something, and stock goes down and you can somehow get your money back. That's cool. I like that. So it intrigued me. It was just, I never thought of that as the law. You kind of think of criminal law, real estate law, contract,
probate.
Probate. Those were like, and I took those courses in school, and it was fine. There's some interesting things, car accidents, fender benders, and so on. But securities laws really got me interested because it was intricate. It was thought-provoking. It was just really complicated, more complicated than the other stuff. I was never much of a form guy, fill out a form and kind of do That's real estate, that's probate. That's mind-numbing. I can't read like a document that's 500 pages or 50 pages and just read the same thing over and over every day. I thought that was boring. That's one of the reasons why I wasn't good at accounting, because you kind of see the same thing over and over. It's just numbers. There's no life to that. In any event, this was like, wow. And you can sue almost any company, and you can be this little guy out of law school or a big guy, and you can sue whoever. And you can, that's just empowering, because it's that David Goliath type thing.
You don't like bullies, right?
Yeah, and I was bullied around when I was a little kid, and then I got my bearing with my car, in high school, But as a little kid, I was a little bit of a nerd, and it took some time for me to, like, from first grade on, and to sort of like adapt culturally with language and all that. But so I do have this instinctive, like, I want to be the David that's
grit. You have grit.
That was part of, there's this, so it really appealed to me. It was like this, and this, like, very few times places that I think of where you can actually make a difference, and law allows you to make a difference. And I never really thought of law as just a job or money making type of thing. Everything I've done because I liked it. I was passionate about it. It was a hobby that turned into a job. And that's why maybe my parents were always said, when are you going to get a real job? Because, you're just playing around with all the stuff you love. And I said, you know what? I have to, I guess. So you asked me when I got my real job. So I had at the end of law school, I think it was the summer, I worked for this law firm, and I came up with an interesting case. It was a unique case, and so I said, I think you should file it. So this lawyer says, well, you know what? If you write it all up, then we'll file it. And I said, okay. So I wrote it all up. And then I said, look, I don't really want to work for the small firm. I'm getting all these large firm offers, and they think I'm smart and all that. So you're just like this little firm and does this wacky, securities, class action stuff that nobody really knows about. And that's not a real job. I want to go, to Park Avenue, Manhattan, and feel, like I'm
the big leagues, right? Go to the majors.
Yeah, so I got a job. So I was offered a job in like a big firm, Pete Marwick, and I was doing tax, and so there was some tax and securities work, but they liked the fact that I did fairly well in college. I was valedictorian, but I don't like to say it anyway. So, so I had
you should be proud of that. You shouldn't. I mean, you worked hard.
Well, my I didn't show up to the ceremony because I think I had something to do. And my parents don't.
Man, he scared me for a second. I thought he was going to say he didn't show up for school and he did something. I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Just making sure it was legitimately valedictorian. Okay, I feel better now.
Oh, but it was a very large school, so they were like, basically anybody that had a 4.0, a perfect score, never got a B, was a valedictorian. So I think there were like 6 or 4 or 5, and they asked me to make a speech. I'm like, I have no time to make a speech. So,
Wow.
I got to do things. So, so somebody else did it, and so on. But for my law school, I did show up, put the whole gown on. I didn't like the gown because it was so hot. They make you put on these
Oh, I'm
gowns
sure.
and
Yeah.
this like this hat, and it looks dorky, you know. I'm like, okay, so just give me your diploma. So Pete Marwick was interesting because it was the first time I get to go into like one of these big buildings with big law and big people, and you know the lawyer that recruited me said that, look, you're gonna work on this really elite sort of group within this organization that deals with tax controversies of very rich people and wealthy people and all that. So I was like, okay, it's interesting. And not only that, we'll send you fully paid to get a master's in law at NYU.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, you know, so it seemed like, you know, big, legit, all that. And it was nice, you know, and for, you know, went to school. I had nightmares because I was doing night school and billing who knows how many hours a day. I was like exhausted every day. I did not have a minute to like breathe. I still sometimes have nightmares because I couldn't keep track of when the next exam is going to be, and so you know, going to work and my obligations at work and exams and all that, it was just one big whirlwind in my mind. So I think for all those people that work and go to school at the same time, unless you've experienced it, it's like you know, you really don't understand the amount of, you know, psychological burden that these folks take, especially if they have families. I didn't have a family then, so if they have families, it's, you know, wow. I whenever I look at new hires or people I want to work with, those are the people that I really look at really hard because they have some grit. And you know, they it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. And I think, you know, I almost lost my mind when I was doing it. The travel back and forth to school. So in any event, I was kind of doing that, and you know, life got into. I was doing it for like 2 years, and I just felt like, wow, this is it. This is like what I'm going to be doing. And I look at, you know, sort of my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss, and they all sit there with their ties and you know, starch white shirts and their gold pen and you know, I was like, I don't know, it's not me. It's just not me. I can't spend my life, you know, sort of, you know, just going up this ladder and getting a bigger office and I actually didn't like what I was doing. I like what I was doing intellectually. I just like I was actually helping. What I realized was I was working in this unit that helped foreign banks evade taxes, which was like, I don't know, it was like these banks were like making hundreds of millions of dollars, and they would go crazy about paying, you know, $2 million of taxes. I'm not talking about the JP Morgans and the Citibanks. I'm talking about, I don't want to say which banks, but because I don't remember, I kind of remember which banks they were, but they were names that you wouldn't recognize because they don't have branches. They come here from, you know, Europe, and they were taking advantage of all these interesting laws about not really being American, but they were taking so much profit out of the American, you know, sort of economy without you and I and even knowing about it. These were like banks that had lavish offices on some floor on the 49th floor on Madison Avenue, and nobody knew their names unless you would travel, you know, outside, you know, to Europe. And these were, you know, the Credit Suisses of the world, but they were like, you know, second or third tier banks. They still had billions of dollars under management, and they were doing all these interesting merchant banking and not paying a dime in taxes. And our job was on principle to really get them down to zero. And if you can get them down to zero taxes, that, you know, on principle, that would be, and we were paid a lot of money for that, and it was very lucrative for our firm. And but you know, I was like, at some point, I was like, you know, and I was just thinking, okay, I can do this. I mean, it's interesting, but it doesn't really get me going at, you know, in the morning. And so I still had my sort of toe into the securities class action world with my sort of, you know, former small firm. You know, that lawyer would always call me and say, gosh, what are you doing wasting your time here? You should come to work for me. And I'm like, no, you know, I mean, you know, I'm this like corporate guy now, you know, I wear a tie.
Sure. Right. I'm on Madison Avenue, baby.
Exactly. Right. It was Park, actually. Park Avenue. 345 Park Avenue. So, he would call, and then he calls me one day and says, "Guess what? Remember that case that you started and that you wrote this article, that you wrote this complaint on?" He says, "Yeah. Well, you know what? They filed a motion to dismiss, which is the first motion they filed, to get rid of the case."
Sure.
He's like, "Nobody here wants to work on it because they think it's your case, and so can I just send all the stuff to you, and maybe you can file an opposition?" I'm like, "All right, yeah, sounds interesting." We worked out some payment arrangement and all that, and now, I was going to school, I was doing this, and I was writing an opposition, and it was really like thick, I remember, and start doing my best. And I was shuttling during my lunch break. It was a couple blocks away. I was shuttling to that firm to try to get a little knowledge about how to respond. And so I was kind of learning on my own time, and I filed a response, and then didn't hear about it for a couple of months. And then he calls me, "Guess what? This case that you came up with while you were in law school, it just won. And you want to dismiss, and can you do this and can you do that?" I was like, "Wow, okay." And one thing led to another. It turned out that this guy made quite a bit of money in legal fees, and the investors got back, I think it was $3 million on this case. So it was nice just to see
wow.
that. I was like, "Wow, this is how it works." And then he said, "Look, you're really good at this. I want you to come and work for me." And at that time, I said it was about 2 years or so, and I said, "Okay, you know what? I'm single. Let me just just do this. It's interesting. It's more interesting what I'm doing." And so I started working there. And that's how I got into the sort of the securities litigation, world. Did that.
I have a question for you. And because I'm not an attorney. I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night though. But anyways, how I would think like big firms that you do take on, have the high price white starch attorneys. It's like, do they right out of, I mean, I imagine right out of the box, they try and intimidate the hell out of you and just make you go away. How do you combat that?
Yeah, well, sometimes I just get intimidated and go away. But,
Good answer.
I think that's a good question. It's hard. I guess I have to answer it in shades of age, meaning as you get older, you get stronger, for me at least, and you start seeing through some of that intimidation. When you're younger, you're much more easily intimidated. So our younger lawyers, we try to train them to not get intimidated, because at the end of the day, the most intimidating thing that a lawyer can do to us, we think, and at least in our world, is intellectually intimidate you. Just because they scream at you and just act intimidating, like we just ignore that. I've always ignored that. I've always liked to look past people's, sort of emotions, because what they're doing to you. Like when I was bullied, and I was, first, second, third grade or whatever, or fifth grade or so. That's just, we all know bullying is just a facade, because there's something behind that. There's some sort of insecurity or some other. We're not going to get into whole psychological workup, but I think it's the same thing with lawyers. They bully you, emotionally. They play with your mind emotionally. I like to think that they're not very confident about their case. So it makes it easier to deal with the bullying if you realize that it's just a front for not being confident. And now you go back to your case and say, well, okay, I think I can win, because it's ultimately about winning. It's not necessarily about who's going to, have that last word. It's about winning the case.
So you found you end up starting your own firm, right? Your own group, the Levi. Am I saying that right? The Levi group.
It's Levy. If he was here, he would say it's Levy.
He'd say Levy. Okay,
Levy.
We have a Levy Park here in town, so I can get with that.
It's Levy and Korsinsky. We have I think a really great relationship, but it doesn't mean that we're always friends. We spend
That's good.
I think from the very get-go, sort of a completely different way of looking at the world. And that's what I think, at least people in my firm say that, and people who get to know us say that that's probably part of our secret sauce, the divergent sort of viewpoints, because we encourage that in our firm. Because we practice that. We are together for nearly 20 years, 17 years. That's a long partnership. And again, we've never seen eye to eye probably on strategy, on many important parts of strategy from the get-go. We look at things differently: long-term, short-term, aggressiveness, the way we look at a case, the way we look at the facts. It's almost like people from two different planets looking at it many times. And oftentimes the right answer is in the middle.
And I'm a firefighter. I'm 44 years old. I have 2 kids. I enjoy fishing and hunting. Why do I care about the work that you do at the firm there? How does the work you do impact me?
Well, in order to be able to enjoy all this, I think you said in your intro, we're going to talk about money. So it takes money to do that. But also more importantly, you're all putting you have a hard job. And a really important part of the remuneration you get is not only non-financial, but it's financial in the sense of we all care about security, right? We all care about our pension plans, our money that we worked so hard for, that's put aside, that's going to carry us into retirement, and it's going to fund our kids' tuitions and college and so on. And we just want to have that security. What I like to think I do is help secure that. And not only that, help grow some of that in ways that are not necessarily, ubiquitous, that you see right here. Everybody knows that there are, investment gurus, day traders, and all that. And those folks, play their part in trying to increase the assets. But there's also us, and we're not very well known about what we can do, what we do to secure your pension and retirement plans and so on.
So, you touch on the trustee, the pension. I'm a trustee, and it's like one of my questions is like, with securities monitoring, it's like, is there a certain size? Like, should we just you don't mess with smaller plans? Should it be billion-dollar plans? What educate me on that.
So what we try to do really is say, okay, you know what, you have this pension fund, and if there's a securities case, the example that I gave you about the $3 million case, that was those were retail investors that got $3 million. But when you have a pension plan with a lot of equities, then there's just money there that you can collect. And it's a zero-sum game, meaning there's money out there for every fund to collect. And if you don't do what you need to do to collect it, the next fund is going to collect it, and the next fund is going to get richer, and your fund is not going to have it. So to answer your question, I don't think that there is a size requirement. I think that because if there was a size requirement, then it would be basically saying that every trustee has to carry out their fiduciary duty unless it's a certain size, unless you're rich enough. I don't think there's a qualifier. I think every trustee has a duty to the fund and to its members to safeguard the investments and to grow them. So yes, of course, you also have to temper that with if it's too expensive or too time consuming or too difficult to, collect the money, then you're not really adding anything to the bottom line. So that's probably the most important sort of metric, how difficult is it? And, and what do I have to do in order to get money? And so the answer is really, do what you can within your size. And there's always something that somebody can do at any size. And I'm even talking about individual sizes because we represent individuals too. We represent high net worth individuals. We represent low net worth individuals. And so there are just so many different ways that people are not aware of, and there's complexity to it in getting money back. And the beauty is that they don't have to do anything on their own other than to engage professionals. And I'm not the only one. There are others like me, and we work with others, various parts of the sort of ecosystem. And the most important thing is just to be aware of it, to be aware that there's something out there that can bring money into the fund, can bring money into your pension plan. And then what you're going to do about it depends on your size, but you can always do something about it.
And then to build on that too, Ed, like what type of investment vehicles are in play here? I mean, is it just exclusively stocks or bonds, or does it relate to every type of investment vehicle?
Right, Mike. That's a great question because it ties into the size and what you can do. So to answer your question directly, it would be mostly stocks because stocks are so much more correlated with something that a CEO does bad, poorly or bad. So if a CEO promises you that he's going to take your company private at $420 a share per se, and it doesn't happen, and he lied about it, and the stock goes down, I think most people don't realize that there is a claim there, and there's something that can be done to get you compensated for your stock. I mean, if we're invested in the stock market, every one of us has opened up our portfolio and seen, oh my gosh, 10% down, 20% down in a stock, and you have that pit in your stomach, and you hate that. So if it's just a market reaction, then it's fair game. But if it's something that could have been prevented by a CEO or whatever, or by issuer, then becomes a legal claim, and that's where we come in. So it's mostly stocks because they're mostly correlated. I'd say that you can start looking at bonds and mutual funds and ETFs and options because there's some correlation to something that a CEO or management does wrong that hurts you, and there are certainly one-offs in some exotic instruments that not so exotic in the pension world because you probably even all have in FX and all sorts of things that a retail investor wouldn't have, instruments that a retail investor wouldn't have. But and it gets into sort of, those are one-offs is what I'm saying. So it gets into trading, and there are only issuers that are doing bad things. There's the market. There are bad people in the market. We've all heard about GME, GameStop, the retail investor versus the institutional investor fighting with each other. That has nothing to do with the company. That has to do with somebody manipulating the market. So there are certainly other instruments where there are participants that manipulate the market that pension fund would have recourse. And so it goes back to size also. I guess I want to touch upon that too, because people are always thinking, how big do I have to be for this? This is all kind of complicated. This is all kind of like, wow, over my head. And the answer is you can be a small fund with a lot of securities that are subject to problems, fraud, and you may be able to get a lot of money, even more money than a larger fund that has, say, other instruments that are not subject to fraud or manipulation. So size, I guess, doesn't always matter.
No, that's a good point about in terms of thinking that this is only something for a certain size fund. I mean, that's important. So my next question to you would be, the services you provide, are those like you come in and provide maintenance where you're on a retainer, you come in and do just some best practices, some reviewing, et cetera, almost like an audit? Or are you only coming in when there's smoke per se, right? When there's smoke, there's fire, something pops up, and then you get a phone call. How's that work?
Right.
So number one, I've always believed that that lawyers should, whenever possible, try to work on contingency. You know, if you can provide value, then you should charge for it in some way. But if you really can't provide value, you know, then you shouldn't charge. So we're not a big believer of retainers and asking people to shell out money, especially because this is something that's so complex. And I just don't think that trustees are, I wouldn't put them in a fair spot if I had to make them try to understand what the value of this at the outset is worth. So we don't charge any money. What we'd like to do and where we'd like to be is a confidant of the trustees. We'd like to build a relationship. And the answer to your question is it's all of the above and some of the above, depending on the institution. So we learn the needs of every particular fund by trying to understand what their goals, what their issues are. So to us, the ideal time to get engaged with us is now, in the beginning, before you have any issues. So certainly not when there's smoke and there's fire. So you all, you know, firefighters, I guess the best, you know, suppose the best analogy in my mind, and I'm not going to get into the firefighter, you know, world because
Oh, come on, take a swing, Ed.
I'll take a swing. I don't know. I mean, I think the best way to save lives is prevention and education rather than, you know, going into a burning building. I mean, you just don't.
Sure, it's like that smoke detector. Your company is like that smoke detector up there, man, and it's always working. 365.
It's always monitoring.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yes.
This is worth the price of admission. You know. So now you have to give away a smoke detector when you get a new client. You know. So here it is.
I like that, Doug.
You write that note down.
I'm writing it down. You know?
Yeah. Okay. And it's well documented. It is well documented on this podcast that the intellectual properties of the smoke detector was right here. You know. But no, we're not lawyers. Don't worry. Call legal, will you? Okay. So
and you're the first one we've met. That's feel comfortable.
So I'm not even comfortable a lot around lawyers. That's why I'm doing this with you guys.
So like, okay, so just digging a little bit deeper as far as lead plaintiff, you know, kind of explain some of that. Like I think it's intimidating from a trustee standpoint. If you're not a multi-billion-dollar fund of like, how could I possibly be a lead plaintiff? And you know, walk us through that.
Right. So as I said, we like to be as you said, Doug, the smoke detector, background watching to make sure everything is safe. So we tie that in with our proprietary systems. That's where technology comes in. That's where I think we're fairly unique as a law firm. We have a lot of technology that we have created to help us understand in a very efficient way what the fund's investment landscape looks like. So if you get to know us, then the first thing we tell you is, okay, well, we're gonna plug into your portfolio and we're gonna see what you have, and we're gonna be able to then advise. So we take a look at what your portfolio looks like. And if we think that there's something that you should be doing or shouldn't be doing from a legal perspective, we're not investment advisors. We don't touch on that. But if there's an opportunity to collect money, you're going to hear from us in a very, non-obtrusive way, but we're there pushing you information. Like going back to the BlackBerry, I don't know if I'm dating myself, but there's a difference between getting email that you have to press a button and try to look for versus getting email that's pushed to you, like the BlackBerry innovation. When information that's important is pushed to you, that's very valuable. So we like to push important information. Now it's gotten crazy these days with everybody pushing non-important information to you, and that's spam. So what we like to do is get people to know us and say, look, you're a good guy, you're a good firm, you work really hard. Information we get from you is going to be important information. We should pay attention to it. So, to answer your question, Doug, it's not intimidating if you have someone that's a trustworthy partner that is holding your hand and pretty much advising you through the process. So like anything, I don't fix my car. It's intimidating to me. I wouldn't walk into a burning building. That would be certainly intimidating to me. They're professionals at every turn. I just took CPR course actually. And I was intimidated by like, wow, gosh, it's 3 hours. Can I really do this? It seemed pretty simple. You just kind of pump, but the first thing they tell you to do is not to pump. The first thing they tell you to do is to call 911, call a professional. So I look at ourselves as professionals who just look at this all the time, and we guide our clients in a way that makes sense. So I don't think it's intimidating once you sort of have this relationship and you have that trust with a provider, and we would guide you through the process. So the bottom line is, if there is an opportunity to collect money, we would tell you, well, you got to fill out this form or that form, or don't do anything, and this strategy or that strategy. And if we're going to get involved in a case, we're going to protect our people. We're going to protect our clients. We're going to represent them. If there's any heat, we're going to tell them about it beforehand. And for the most part, there really isn't in these cases. This is not a divorce. This is not a contentious battle. Just remember, you are one investor of many, sometimes, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So what we're doing for you is by getting engaged in this relationship, and educating you, and it's a constant education process. We're sending education out. We are elevating you above those thousands of other investors and hundreds of other pension funds. So if you're doing what we advise that you should be doing, you're collecting that money that the others are leaving on the table, and we're doing it mostly for you. So it's a win-win.
Ed, if I'm one of our listeners and I'm a trustee or I'm an advisor, I'm involved in my pension, hell, maybe I'm just invested in my plan, and I have a concern about this. How can they get in touch with you? How can they find your firm, your services? What's that front door? Where's that front door, and how do they get in it?
So first, you can always call me. I'm available. I'll talk. I talk to a lot of trustees. They have various concerns. So please call me. Please call our head of investor relations, Doug Borths. He's well known in the community. Used to run the Opal conferences and so on. And we have a team that actually listens to everything and so on and so forth. So the front door is just give me an email. Just shoot me an email.
Sure.
That's the easiest way.
Perfect. I love it. Ed, it's been great having you on. Do we need to cover anything else, Doug? What are we missing here?
No, I think there's a lot more, but I think we have to follow up with another podcast, because this is good education, and it's not something that you get in a 10-minute presentation. There's a lot of moving parts here, but the reality is as being fiduciaries, we have an obligation to get funds protected and funds returned to us, because not everybody's doing things above board. But
there's so many different ways to do it, and we can talk about that at other times, obviously, because it does get pretty granular. But what I love about what I do is David Goliath type of thing on behalf of funds, and ultimately over time, I love the fact that people see what we're doing and the value that we're bringing, and we protect funds and we help them make money over time, in a way that's not hard to do. I mean, I know I sound like some lawyer with a lot of complexity associated with it, but just because there's complexity in a car and an engine doesn't mean you have to know every part of it. You can still drive it. So I'd like to be that car that you all driving, and I like to be, I'd like to get you to where you need to get. And that's sort of the best way that I could think of it.
It all comes full circle, doesn't it? The old Delta 88, it came full
Yeah,
circle. I
know.
love it.
Yeah.
Ed, you're good, man. You are good.
Thank you.
You are good. Well, Doug, I think it's time to send it off. I do want to say thank you, Ed, for the work that you do, have done. It's important work. It ensures that, as I told you, why does a 44-year-old firefighter with a couple kids and a few years left on the job, why does it matter? Well, it matters, like you said, because it's the sustainability and the availability of that hard earned and hard worked for promise that we made. When I signed up for this job, they promised me something. They promised me that defined benefit pension plan, and there's many sides to that. It's not just a triangle. There's many more sides to that puzzle that they all have to work and be in place. And you're one of the most important parts of all that. So we appreciate, thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on. It's been very enjoyable.
Well, that's good.
We had a little fun, didn't we? We laughed a few times.
It's like Ed, I have to say, you are human. You were concerned about being human. You are human, and I want to get some more background. It's good stuff, but more professional background also too. But anyways, folks, thanks for tuning in to the Doug and Mike show. We're going to have more education to follow, and thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, guys, you have a great day. Thanks again. Real quick, I mention our sponsors. Thanks to Chief Miller. You can find him on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube at Chief_Miller_. Y'all have a great day. We'll see you next time.